July 29th, 1014 Anno Domini. In a narrow mountain pass along the slopes of Mount Belisitsa, the fate of the Balkans would be written in blood and tears. This is the story of the Battle of Kleidion, a confrontation so brutal that its aftermath would echo through centuries. At the dawn of the 11th century, Europe stood divided. In the West, the Holy Roman Empire struggled with internal fragmentation. In the East, two powers clashed for dominance over the Balkans, the ancient Byzantine Empire and the rising First Bulgarian Empire. Leading Byzantium was Basil II, born in 958, crowned emperor at the age of 2. For nearly 4 decades, this man had devoted his life to a single obsession: the destruction of Bulgaria. Methodical, relentless, unforgiving, he would earn a title that still chills the blood: Basil the Bulgar-Slayer. Opposing him stood Tsar Samuel of Bulgaria, a warlord who had built an empire from the ruins of the old Bulgarian state. Since 976, these two titans had waged war across the mountains and valleys of the Balkans. For 38 years, neither could deliver the decisive blow. The Byzantine-Bulgarian wars had ravaged a generation. Villages burned, populations displaced, entire armies swallowed by mountain ambushes. The people of both empires knew only war. By 1014, Basil had systematically dismantled Bulgarian strongholds throughout Macedonia and Thrace. Samuel's empire was shrinking. The noose was tightening. But Samuel was not finished. In the summer of 1014, he made a stand at a place called Kleidion, a strategic mountain pass between modern-day Bulgaria and Greece. Here, the Bulgarians are would stake everything on one desperate gamble. The stage was set for one of the most decisive and most horrifying battles of the Middle Ages. The trap at Kleidion, the Kleidion Pass, in Greek meaning the key, was a narrow defile cutting through the Belisitsa Mountains. Steep slopes rose on both sides. Dense forests concealed movement. For an army trying to advance north into Bulgarian territory, there was no way around it. Samuel knew this, and he intended to make it a killing ground. The Bulgarian forces constructed a formidable defensive line across the narrowest point of the pass. Wooden palisades reinforced with stone, archer positions on the heights. The natural terrain amplified their advantage. Any Byzantine force attempting to break through would be funneled into a death trap. Samuel positioned his army, estimated between 15,000 to 20,000 men, behind these fortifications. His plan was simple: bleed the Byzantines in the pass, force them to retreat, preserve his army for another day. It was a sound strategy, but Basil II had not survived 4 decades of warfare by walking into obvious traps. The Byzantine counterstroke. When Basil's scouts reported the Bulgarian positions, the emperor faced a choice. A frontal assault would be suicidal. A siege would take too long. Samuel could escape, regroup, and the war would drag on for years. Basil chose a third option. He turned to one of his most capable generals, Nikephoros Xiphias, the governor of the Philippopolis theme, a veteran commander who had fought in Basil's campaigns for years. To him, the emperor entrusted a critical mission. While the main Byzantine army demonstrated before the Bulgarian fortifications, creating the illusion of preparing for a frontal assault, Xiphias would lead a detachment on a secret march. They would circle through the mountain paths, bypassing the fortifications entirely, and strike the Bulgarians from behind. It was a classic hammer and anvil tactic, but in this terrain, it was extraordinarily risky. The detachment would have to navigate treacherous mountain trails, maintain complete silence, and arrive at exactly the right moment. For days, Xiphias's force moved through the wilderness. Sources suggest they marched by night to avoid detection, guided by local scouts who knew the mountain trails. Every step had to be precise. If the Bulgarians discovered them, the entire plan would collapse. Meanwhile, Samuel's attention remained fixed on Basil's main army. The Bulgarians watched. They waited. They prepared for the frontal assault they expected. They never saw the blade coming for their backs. The storm breaks. July 29th, 1014. Dawn. Nicephorus and his force emerged from the mountain paths behind the Bulgarian lines. The trap had been reversed. The Byzantine attack struck like thunder. The Bulgarians, positioned to defend against an assault from the front, suddenly found themselves fighting on two fronts. Chaos erupted along the defensive line. The main Byzantine army, seeing the signal, launched their assault on the fortifications. What had been a defensive strongpoint became a death trap for its defenders. Caught between two Byzantine forces, the Bulgarian army began to disintegrate. Samuel's soldiers fought desperately. These were not professional troops, but levies, farmers, and shepherds defending their homeland. They had followed their Tsar into this pass, believing the fortifications would protect them. Now, those same fortifications hemmed them in. Historical sources from the period, including the Byzantine chronicler John Skylitz's and the later Bulgarian chronicles, described the battle as a catastrophic rout. The Bulgarian army, unable to maneuver in the confined space, suffered devastating casualties. Some fought to the death. Others tried to flee into the mountains. Most threw down their weapons and surrendered. By the end of that terrible day, the Byzantine forces had captured approximately 14,000 to 15,000 Bulgarian soldiers. The sources vary on exact numbers, but all agree it was an almost complete destruction of Samuel's army. Samuel's escape. Tsar Samuel himself narrowly escaped the carnage. With a small bodyguard of loyal warriors, he fled north into the Bulgarian heartland. The empire he had built over decades was crumbling around him. But the nightmare had only begun. The blinding. Basil's judgment. In the aftermath of Kleidion, Basil II faced a decision that would define his legacy forever. He had 15,000 Bulgarian prisoners. Feeding and guarding such a massive number was impractical. Releasing them would simply replenish Samuel's army. Executing them all would be wasteful, and might unite the Bulgarian population against Byzantium in a war of vengeance. So Basil chose something else, something calculated to break not just an army, but the will of an entire people. He ordered the prisoners to be blinded. According to the Byzantine chroniclers, Basil commanded that 99 out of every 100 prisoners have both eyes removed. The 100th man would lose only one eye, left with just enough vision to guide his blinded comrades home. Let that sink in for a moment. 15,000 men, deliberately, systematically blinded. Historical sources, including John Skylitz's Synopsis of Histories, written in the late 11th century, confirm this act. Modern historians debate the precise numbers. Some suggest the total was closer to 14,000, but the essential horror remains undisputed. This was not done in the heat of battle. It was calculated, methodical. It took days to complete. When the columns of blinded men finally reached the Bulgarian capital at Prespa, Tsar Samuel came out to receive them. Contemporary sources report that upon seeing his army, thousands of his warriors stumbling forward, empty sockets where eyes had been, hands grasping desperately at each other, the old Tsar collapsed. On October 6, 1014, just 2 months after Kleidion, Tsar Samuel died. The Bulgarian chronicles attributed his death to the shock of witnessing his blinded soldiers. While the exact medical cause is unknown, historians generally accept that the psychological trauma contributed to his demise. Why? Why did Basil do this? Was it pure cruelty? Revenge for decades of war? Contemporary Byzantine sources suggest a strategic calculation. Blinding was a traditional Byzantine punishment for rebels and traitors. It removed them from combat permanently, while keeping them alive as warnings. In Byzantine logic, this was more merciful than execution. Moreover, it sent an unmistakable message to every fortress, every town, every stronghold still resisting Byzantine rule. This is what defiance costs. Surrender, or share their fate. It was terrorism as military strategy. And it worked. The fall of Bulgaria. After Kleidion, Bulgarian resistance crumbled. Samuel's son and successor, Gavril Radomir, attempted to continue the fight, but was assassinated in 1015. The succession disputes that followed tore the empire apart from within. Basil II pressed his advantage relentlessly. One by one, the Bulgarian strongholds fell. Cities that had resisted for decades opened their gates. The Balkan provinces that had broken away from Constantinople in the 10th century returned to imperial control. In 1018, 4 years after Kleidion, the last Bulgarian emperor, Ivan Vladislav, died in battle. The First Bulgarian Empire ceased to exist. After 38 years of continuous warfare, Basil II had achieved what no Byzantine emperor had managed for centuries: the complete reconquest of Bulgaria. Basil's triumph. Basil returned to Constantinople as the most successful military emperor since Justinian, the Great 5 centuries earlier. The Byzantine Empire reached its greatest territorial extent in 400 years. From the Adriatic to the Caucasus, from the Danube to Syria, imperial authority was unquestioned. But history would remember him not for his administrative reforms, not for his expansion of Byzantine power, not for stabilizing the empire for a generation. History would remember him for those 15,000 blinded soldiers stumbling home through the mountain passes. Basil II, Basil the Bulgar-Slayer, Basileos ho Bulgaraktonos. Legacy. Today, the pass at Kleidion is quiet. Forests have reclaimed the slopes where armies clashed. No physical trace remains of the fortification Samuel built, or of the massacre that followed. But the Battle of Kleidion stands as a turning point in medieval history. It marked the end of Bulgarian independence for more than 150 years. It demonstrated the brutal effectiveness of psychological warfare, and it showcased the ruthlessness required to build and maintain an empire. The Byzantine-Bulgarian Wars, which had raged since the 9th century, finally ended. The Balkans were, for a time, united under one crown. Basil's victory at Kleidion ensured Byzantine dominance in southeastern Europe for another generation. 2 men, 2 empires, 1 mountain pass. On July 29, 1014, the fate of the Balkans was decided not by the clash of armies alone, but by what came after. A calculated act of terror that broke an empire and forged a legend. This was Kleidion. This was the price of empire. This was the day Byzantium crushed Bulgaria. Basil II ruled for another 11 years, dying in 1025 at the age of 67. He never married, never had children, and spent almost his entire adult life on military campaigns. The Bulgarian people would not regain their independence until 1185, when the Second Bulgarian Empire rose from the ashes of the first. As for the 15,000 men blinded at Kleidion, their names are lost to history, but their tragedy remains one of the most haunting episodes of the medieval age.